I'm so glad to have you here today to celebrate the launch of After the Water books. Congratulations. It's an exciting day for you. This is your sophomore novel and really a gift to the Christian fiction community, I believe. And so I'm really glad for your writing. I'm glad for you, and I'm glad that you're here today. So, what has your launch day been like so far today?
It's been great. It's been a good day. My daughter unfortunately isn't feeling well today, so we're just laying low at home, and which is great, just having a family day at home. Um, but yeah, it's been a good morning. My husband made us crepes, and I got, some yummy coffee, and so all is wonderful.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I've got sick kiddos too. I think, well, ours I think started as fall allergies and then evolved, but it's just kind of that time of year.
Yeah.
So hopefully she'll be feeling better soon.
Yeah.
So how do you share like your writing with your kids? Like what do they know about the books you've written? What have you told them?
I don't think they really know content-wise,
Mhm.
what book, but they know that my writing's a ministry and that like I'm using it to point people to Christ. Um, so they're really sweet 'cause they're really excited for me and everything, and they talk about my books to people. Like they like
Yeah.
tell people, the title of the book and give people books, and it's like really sweet. And I try to, include them in it as much as I
Yeah.
can. Like it's hard, because age wise and stuff. But you had a post recently about including your kids like in your writing and your ministry and stuff, and I thought that was just so brilliant and so spot on. And I try to bring them into it as much as I can.
Yeah.
Like my son, especially, like he's a problem solver, and so I'll be like, I have this issue with my plot. I have one character that's doing this and one character that's doing this. What do you think that should happen next? And whether I use his idea or not, like it's fun because he gets to like brainstorm with me, and like he's thought about maybe like writing a book himself one day, and
Oh, good. Yeah.
so
And your husband's a musician too, right?
yeah.
So like and the way that I see it, just like in our family, we celebrate each other's accomplishments, and I just kind of view it in those terms. So like if my son accomplished something and, his sphere of influence, then we would celebrate that. And so I think, us releasing a book is also it's a family thing. It's something that God has allowed our family to do, and should be celebrated. And I'm glad that they're able to support you um, and I do think, as long as we do our best to try to not keep it like something that's like separate from the family, but something that like this is something we do. I think that there's no reason that healthy kids shouldn't be able to celebrate, what their mom's accomplishments. So that's great.
Totally agree.
So tell me about when you first started to fall in love with writing. Like, where did this come from? Was it something you always wanted to do, or is this something you started after you got older, or how did it start?
I mean, the day I came out of my mama's womb, I was writing books. No, kidding. But like ever since I can remember, I've been a writer. Like I always loved books, was obsessed with them as a kid. I was always trying to write my own. And so like I thought, when I was 5, 6 years old, I'd be an author one day. Like that was my biggest
Wow.
dream. Author or waitress or a garbage man. But or a secretary, that was the other one. But
That's awesome.
anyway, so I mean, it's always been like a lifelong passion of mine. Um, Kind of got away from it, as I got older, like going into college and all that. And then came back to it as an adult, realizing like, hey, I could do this. Like that dream doesn't have to be dead. Like I actually can take a stab at this. And so then I started writing. And I mean, there's many manuscripts that have not seen the light of day and that have not been published, which is a really good thing because I've grown and changed so much.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's been a lifelong thing.
So you didn't study it in college then, it sounds like.
No, no, I actually went to college to be a surgical tech.
Oh,
So
that wasn't on the list at all.
no,
Okay. So then how did you go ahead and learn the craft of writing then? I didn't do it in college either, but how did you get to that
I mean,
point then? Just writing, or did you take courses or anything?
I never really took courses. I think being a lifelong reader has always helped, and I've been writing. It was probably really poorly, but I'd been writing my whole life. Um, and then when I started taking it seriously, I started trying to like read my favorite books from like a writer's eye, not just a reader's eye. Um, and then I read a few books that really helped me kind of like hone in my craft. And I think honestly the best thing was going to like a few different writers conferences, and there was like workshops. And I brought my manuscript and I was like, you know what? I'm paying a lot of money for this. I'm going to just put myself out there even though I really don't this. And so at every writer's workshop, I was the first one to raise my hand and read a section of my work and get critique and feedback. And, it helped me so much, just like being brave and like putting it out there. Like that changed everything for me, honestly.
That's amazing because I think, your writing is just really excellent and you can tell that you've put the work into it. And I guess you have learned from some people who really knew what they were doing. So it was worth it, I believe. But as far as like manuscripts that you wrote early on, looking at it later, you just see it through different eyes because you are older now and like you said, you've changed. And I kind of wonder, even like with the books I put out, I'm like, oh my goodness, is 50-year-old me going to hate this? And I guess I just don't need to worry about that right now because 50-year-old me is going to know things that I don't know now. And I just have to be okay with that. But
Yeah.
um, at some point, you have to just put it out and not keep holding it back. So what was your first story idea that made you want to try to write a book? Do you remember that with all the writing that you've done?
I mean, like as a kid,
Well,
totally.
I guess the first time that you really thought like this, I could write a book.
Yeah. So I was 19, 20, I don't remember, somewhere 21, somewhere around there when I was like, I'm going to do this for real. I'm going to really try this. And it was a romance novel. And I don't know where I got the idea from, but it was terrible. And it was this girl who, went on a vacation to London or something and fell in love with this guy. I'd never been to London, never knew anything about any, you know, of the culture there or anything. And it was garbage. But like it was such a good like stepping stone for me
Yeah.
because I finished my first full manuscript. I learned so much. Like it was great, even though it's never seen the light of day, like it was a huge stepping stone. And I don't think that everything that we write is meant to be published. I think, a lot of what we do is meant to, teach us, and, we can learn from things and move on from it and move on to something better. So, yeah.
So you're, Come Forth as Gold is a coming of age story, and it has like a light romance in it.
Mhm.
Um, but I wouldn't feel that I wouldn't classify the book as a romance necessarily. It's more coming of age. And then the book after the Water Brooks is when Claude and Kitty are older. And so it doesn't have like a romance in the terms of like people are falling in love, but they're in love and they're staying in love. So is that like a trajectory that you think that you'll probably be keeping up, or do you think that you'll be doing more romance in the future? Because you've done like a little bit of it, so kind of which direction are you feeling that you'll be going?
Well, I think I have like another historical fiction novel that I'm planning in my head. I haven't officially like started it yet. But I think that and then any other project will have some sort of romance incorporated into it, not super heavily into the plot. But I do have the romantic comedy series that I'm co-authoring with Brittany.
Yeah, that's exciting. So you said series. I thought that was one book. That's going to be a series.
Series, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And when's the first book coming out for that one?
Next month in November.
Wow. I didn't realize you were so far along.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the next question is, what do you want readers to feel or know when reading your novels?
I mean, the whole point, I feel like, of me writing is to share, the love of Christ with people. And so I hope that they can walk away from my books, feeling something that they have never felt before, like knowing something about Jesus they've never known, or, looking at something a different way, maybe like feeling compassion or forgiveness towards somebody. I just want to point people to Christ. And I think that I try to make my books layered enough so that I can reach different people,
Yeah.
maybe reach that one who struggles really bad with forgiving someone who wronged them, and maybe reach someone else who struggles, really bad with grief. So I'm just trying to point
Yeah.
people to that freedom that he gives us.
One of the just kind of vibes I get when I read your books is, to me, they feel like fall, and they feel cozy to me. Is that something that's just like your aesthetic, do you think? Or where am I getting that from?
I don't know. Maybe, I mean, yeah, I feel like that's kind of like my personal vibe, maybe, that's like bleeding into the book. But I don't know how to answer this question.
Oh, well, that's just kind of off the cuff. So, but when I think of Erica books, that's what I think of, because like they do have that kind of melancholy feel of fall, but not like the depression of winter. There's like, it's cozy. Like it's a little bit melancholy, but it's not like sad. There's hope in it, and that's something that I really appreciate about your writing. So I guess that's where I get that feeling from.
I like
Um,
that.
have you? What has surprised you about your writing journey?
Um, well, I think the biggest surprise was being a Christian fiction author, honestly, because I never started out writing Christian fiction. Like everything, I like, for example, that romance novel that my like first official take a stab at, writing. It wasn't glorifying sin necessarily, but like it wasn't exclusively Christian at all. And then a couple of books that I wrote after that definitely were more secular. And then it wasn't until like 2020 when I really started taking my faith more seriously, and like the Lord convicted me of so many things that I decided that, like, oh, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it for his glory. And so everything kind of changed, and I never thought like, oh, I'd grow up and be a Christian fiction author. Like, and I never thought maybe my faith would be like such a strong part of my life, but it's everything now. And so that was a very pleasant surprise.
That's really cool. I remember you sharing that story at some point about your husband and you during COVID, and how you really dug into God's word. And it's really cool how God just draws each of us to himself in our own way and in our own time. And I really enjoyed hearing, you share that previously on your Instagram. Um, that was really cool how he worked in your hearts during that time. And I think that that's true for a lot of us that maybe, I find that there's a lot of Christian authors that maybe had started out not intending to write overtly Christian fiction, and then kind of came to the point where we can't write anything else, honestly.
Yeah, I completely
Have you ever had to sacrifice anything for the sake of your writing?
do loads of laundry count.
They'll always be there tomorrow, they will be there tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. But yeah, I mean, kind of playing off of the last question, like being a Christian fiction author, I feel like when I, became overtly Christian in like my presence on Instagram and what I was writing, that actually cost me a lot of friendships. And you know,
Wow.
that was a really interesting time. Like that was also, during COVID and stuff. Um, I had been working on, I don't remember which book I was working on at the time, but I was working on something, and it might have been, no, I don't know. Anyway, but I was working on something, and during this time, like I felt so convicted, and I felt God really working in my heart and in our lives. And I put up an Instagram story, and I was like, my focus here, it's still going to be on books and writing, but it's going to be, more Christ centered. And it was just a simple like story with text. And literally, like within a day, it was like 500 people were just poof, gone.
Oh my goodness.
And it
Wow.
was crazy. And what was sad was that like a lot of those people were people I knew personally, like friends, and then people, you know, who maybe I'd never met, but we had struck up like an online friendship. And they were like, nope, I'm out. And so that was really an interesting time. But uh yeah, and so I think that in a way is like, I don't know if that's necessarily like a sacrifice, but I think that yeah, I'm not really sure where I'm going with this now. Um, but yeah, I guess I kind of had to give up some of those like friendships, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in a way, like a sacrifice. Um, and outside of that, I mean, obviously there's times when like there's social events and different things going on that like, hey, I can't make it because I have this deadline I'm working on, or I have, you know, what, there's little things like that that has come up, but thankfully we have a pretty flexible schedule, so that doesn't really interfere too much.
And I'm sure, people could say, and I don't know if you even had the thought, when you're losing so many followers, like you could have the thought that your impact is being affected. Like I had the opportunity to impact X number of people, and now my impact is greatly reduced. And, am I really following God at that point if, before I could reach as many people and now I can't? It just reminded me of what Phil Vischer said after the fall of Big Idea. And he was just like, impact is God's responsibility. Like it's our responsibility to obey and to do what he's called us to do. And that impact is God's responsibility. So it's not about how many people I can reach, but like how well am I reaching the people that he has given me. And so I don't know if that can be encouraging when you see like such a huge drop in your numbers to know that God knows, and that's up to him.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think that, you know, he calls us to be good stewards with, you know, what he's given us. And, you know, so like you're saying, you know, just, okay, put your head down, work, give it your best, right, for his glory. And then he's going to take care of the rest and put it in the hands of the readers who really need it, you know?
Yeah. And Ramona says, look at what you have gained now and what God has done in your life in place of that, you know.
So, so true.
Um, the next question is for you to tell us about what you're working on now, which we kind of touched on earlier. You talking about this rom-com series with Britt.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk more about that?
Yeah. I mean, I can't say too much because like we haven't officially like released the blurb and stuff yet,
Okay.
but that's coming very, very soon, and the cover's coming very soon. Um, that series, it's been so much fun. Like I never thought I'd be co-authoring a
Yeah.
book with anybody, and I don't think I could do it with just
Right.
anybody, but she and I were together.
Hi, Britt.
So hi, Britt. um, so yeah, so that it's been such a fun project. I think this book, I just like adore it. Like, and we talk about this all the time, how anytime we're writing it or like reading what each other has written, we're just grinning from ear to ear, like,
Oh,
like dorkily smiling, you know, because it's been such a fun project. It's such a sweet book. I can't wait to share it with everybody. So yeah, that is going to be coming soon next month. And yeah.
I think anytime, an author really enjoys what they're writing, I think that comes out in the writing.
I hope.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's been fun.
That was something, that Joanna Davidson Politano said at the Christian Mommy Writers Retreat when she was speaking to us. She was like, write what sparks wonder in your heart, because you are God's workmanship too, and he gave you that idea. And if you love it and you have that spark, then that's other people will too. They'll feed off that wonder that you have.
That is so powerful. I love that so much.
What is something that you love to do when you're not writing and doing laundry, obviously?
Yeah, doing laundry. Oh man. Well, reading, of course. I love going out for hikes, taking my dog for walks. I love just doing family time.
Yeah.
I mean, those are kind of my main things.
I hear you.
Hmm.
Who are some of your favorite authors?
Some of my,
Since you've talked about reading several times in this talk. So who do you
yeah.
like to read?
So probably my longest favorite author would be C.S. Lewis. I mean, he greatly
Yeah.
impacted me as a kid. Series were huge. I was absolutely obsessed with those. And so I really respect him. Leaf Anger is also a favorite of mine.
Sure.
His piece, Like a River, like
I,
greatly inspired me.
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, yeah. So I really love him. Also, William Kent Kruger. Um, really was inspired by him, and I like his work. I love you and all of your books and your work.
Great.
Um, Brittany Howard is obviously, I just love her, I adore her. I'm trying to think of everyone. Who do I read? Pepper, I don't know how to say her last name. Basham? Basham?
Pepper Basham.
Basham. Okay. Thank you.
I know. I got to meet her in person.
Oh my, I discovered her work, I don't know, sometime within the last year or something. Um,
Uh-huh.
I'm like so in love with her. And another recent discovery is Nicole Deese.
Oh
I'm
yes,
like,
I started reading her this year too. Oh my goodness,
she is so good.
so good. Yeah.
And then another one in like recent years is Amanda Dykes. I
Yes.
really like what I've read of her.
Yeah.
I can't read more of her books. Um, let me look at my bookshelf.
Well,
Who do I read?
you don't feel guilty later when you remember somebody that you really should have met. It's okay. Just release yourself of that guilt.
Yes. Anyway, yeah. So I love reading. I'm exploring new
Yeah.
now too, so that's kind of fun. Like,
Hmm.
Giannis has made me a little bit of a fantasy reader, which I don't think anyone be a fantasy reader. Uh, but she puzzled away and broken through that barrier with me. Um, but yeah, I can't really think of my brain as much. So yeah,
Well, it is launch day. You are completely allowed to have your brain feel like mush. I have been there 4 times.
thanks for the
Um,
permission.
One of the things, when I read C.S. Lewis that really strikes me is how much he says with how few words. And it's like, gosh, that's inspiring. The way that his books are so compact.
Yeah,
And that's just amazing to me. And
like
yet he
everything.
says so much.
Yeah, I think there's a delay.
Um, yeah. What, what advice would you give to other moms who want to write? Because you're an expert, obviously. So,
I mean, being a mommy writer, it's such a tricky balance, right? You know how it goes. But I think that it's important if God is like putting something in our heart, like, hey, here's a story that I really want you to tell, and we can feel that it's from Him. I think that we need to honor that. And I think that writing is a great creative outlet. And I think that everyone should have a creative outlet. It's healthy, it's good
yeah.
for us. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that there is a way to make that happen. Even though motherhood is overwhelming entirely on its own, there's a way you can make it work for your family. That might mean waking up an hour early, to write. That might mean changing up your schedule during the day. Like for me, I either wake up early and try to get my work done before anyone else is awake in the house. Or, I capitalize on time during the day. Like,
Sure.
school, and I'm kind of like I'm so go with the flow. So most of the time we try to like start school in the morning after breakfast,
Yeah.
and then when they're done with their work for the day, I'm like, hey, have free time, go play, whatever, and that's when I write.
Mhm.
Or if in the morning after breakfast they are caught up in playing make believe, doing something together, I'm like, I'm not going to interrupt that, and I go,
Right.
spend time writing until they come up and find me and are like, Mom, when are we gonna start school? Whatever. So I think that it's doable. I think that, if you can set yourself up to steal away those little moments, like, have your laptop always plugged in so that, oh, you see the kids playing, flip it open and just start candy. Make use of your time in the car. If your husband's driving and you're in the passenger seat and you guys are driving around, instead of, if you normally would read or scroll through Instagram or whatever during that time, bring a notebook, right?
Yeah.
But you just have to make it happen.
Yeah, that's true. And that's just going to look different for different people.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So we technically only have one more question on our list, but I just wanted to talk a little bit more about After the Water Brooks because it's such an exciting day. So Come Forth as Gold is technically historical fiction because the dividing line of historical fiction is the Vietnam War. And then After the Water Brooks is after the Vietnam War. So is that like technically, I mean, there is one point of view that's earlier. But so it's technically not historical fiction. But what kind of like research did you have to do for After the Water Brooks?
So for After the Water Books, I mean, I had to make sure that everything was accurate as I was going through, like all of those earlier time periods,
Yeah.
the late 30s life, between 45 and 50. Just making sure that things that she was going through or Leah was going through, were accurate to the time period. And, Kitty moved around. And so I had to research the places that she lived with her aunt and, tried to include some historical things that were going on, in those cities at the time that she might have been living there. And then, yeah, just like making sure that, everything was accurate, like, in the 80s, like obviously no one's going to be using their cell phone or
I,
anything like
I
that.
know. There was a couple of times in the book when I was just like, if they could just call each other.
Right?
How did
I know.
people used to live like this?
I know. Now you can just like FaceTime someone that's on the other side of the world.
Yeah, and like they had to use a map. It was
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah.
Um, so was it hard to write an older woman, someone who's like at a stage of life that you haven't actually experienced yourself yet? Because I find my hardest characters to write are the older people because I'm like, insert something wise that I don't know what it is. But how is that for you? How did you go about writing Kitty?
I mean, yeah, it was kind of difficult. I wanted to make sure that I captured her in that, stage of life well. And I hope I did a good job. I just tried to like put myself in her shoes. And, the best that I can. And, pull off of experiences that, I've seen like, older women that I know go through or, you know, that type of a thing. But yeah, it's kind of hard to write about something that you've never actually gone through yourself. But that's the trick of writing, I guess.
I really enjoyed, that you came back to Claude and Kitty because I really enjoy the kinds of books where, I don't know, you see like a love story that stayed a love story and, they're still able to communicate with each other and appreciate each other and flirt with each other and not in a like completely unrealistic way.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that they were true to who Claude and Kitty were. And yeah, I just really enjoyed seeing them later and seeing them doing well.
Yeah.
Their marriage and Claude's just as sweet as ever. Fly,
I know.
the best.
That's my heart. I just love them so much. Like, I feel like these characters are so real to me, and I think every author can say that.
Yeah.
Like you get to know them so well, they just feel so real. And I was hoping like with their marriage that I could try to set an example, for what a healthy marriage can look like. I think that there's so many marriages, that out there in this world that you see people together and they either divorce or they're unhappy or that spark is gone. And I don't think that has to really be the case. Like just because you're with someone for a long time, I think that
Yeah.
you still can be just as in love or even more than you ever were. So yeah, and I was kind of like, oh, sorry, what?
So I was going to say that I also love the presence of Claude's parents, that they're still around and that Kitty's able to just like call up Claude's mom just like she used to. I really loved that.
Yeah. I love their relationship. You know, I think that like it's what my blah 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 blah. Okay, let me try to find my words here. Um, you know, there's so many relationships in the book, in my book. I feel like it's, you know, like a tree branch, like this person and this person, and we're also connected, you know, and we have such an impact on so many people. And like if we think about like, okay, who do we want to be? Do we want to be that person who someone can call us and say, you know, at any stage of their life and be like, hey, I need some advice or I need some encouragement? Like, do we want to be that person for someone? Like, and I think most of us really do, you know? And I think we all need someone like Ginny in our lives, you know? We all need someone like Claude. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I just hope that people can like read this and think about who they want to be, and, you
Yeah.
know, yeah, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
you don't just wake up one morning and find that you are a wise, caring old person.
Right. Right. It's,
I mean, I tell my kids that now about adulthood, but it's true for me too, as I am an adult and think about who I want to be in the future.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
you know,
And I just thought, Claude had been given such a good example of loving parents, and he was able to use that to extend to other people, which, if his parents hadn't been that way. So just open and inclusive and welcoming people into their home and caring for people outside their immediate circle, like, would he have been that kind of person that Kitty needed? And so it's generational, and it matters, the choices that we make. But
yeah, I
they
mean, if,
were inspiring.
oh, thank you. If you look at, you know, like Claude's family, his parents and the impact, you know, that they had on their children, especially, you know, with Claude, and then you look at Kitty's parents and the impact that they
Yeah.
had on, it's so generational. And you have to ask yourself, what are we passing on to the next generation? Because that's not just going to affect your kids, it's going to affect their kids
Yeah.
and so on.
So how can we be praying for your writing journey?
That's such a good question. I would say just for me to have the time to write, you know, good, fruitful time to write every day or however often. And just that I can do it in a God honoring way, that I can be intentional with my time,
Yeah.
not be, you
Yeah.
know, yeah, maybe
Well,
just like,
I'm so thankful for you and your writing ministry and your books. I guess everybody who's here knows that they can find you here on Instagram. After the Water Books is out today. It's on um, Amazon as well as other booksellers, right? You have it at Barnes and Noble and other places, I thought.
yep, it's pretty much available wherever books can be purchased online.
Awesome. Run, don't walk. Make sure you read Come Forth as Gold first. And I'm so honored to have you here with us today. Happy launch day. Many, many blessings on this book and the wherever God chooses to take it from here. Now that you've done your part, I'm excited to see what he does with it.
Thank you so much, Heather. I appreciate you so, so much.
You take care. Have a good rest of your day. And thank you, everybody, for joining. We loved having you here.
Yes, thank you, everybody.